Good morning, everybody, and happy Saturday. Welcome to another episode of Grief. Let's Talk about it podcast. Today we have a really special guest for you guys. Just a brief introduction about him. His name is Jason Clawson. He's a therapist with 60 years of experience specializing in trauma, grief, addiction, and mental health. In 2018, his world was shook when his wife, Valerie, battled stage 4 cancer, and it was only 9 months until he had to say goodbye. Feeling lost and isolated, wondering if happiness could find him again. Depression, isolation, and anxiety became his daily companions. He struggled to navigate his own emotions, and we all know a little bit about that, right? You know what I'm saying? But and Lord behold, love found a way back into his life. Kristen became his joy and renewed hope against all odds. They welcomed Maisie, their miracle baby. And inspired by their journey, his partner Wyatt and him co-founded Hope Kit, spreading hope and healing worldwide. So without further ado, I'm going to bring my guest up here. You guys, if you're just tuning in this morning, if you're looking on any other platforms, thank you for tuning in. If you guys want to support the channel, please do me a favor, go over to the YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. And during the conversation, be sure to leave us a comment. Let us know what's on your mind. Ask those questions, get them answered in real time. Without further ado, I'm gonna bring on my guest. And good morning to you guys.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Tony.
Jason. How we doing
Awesome
this
to
morning,
be
brother?
here. I'm doing
Oh
good.
man, it's a pleasure to have you here, man. You know what I'm saying? I've been looking forward to this conversation, man.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been ever since we initially talked. I've been thinking about this and super excited to be able to help your listeners and share what I need to be able to help others.
Yes, yes, yes. I appreciate you being here, brother. Before we get started into your story, man, like I said, I was reading your bio, and I was just like, wow, man, so inspiring. You know, the work that you're doing, man. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. It's such a huge, huge benefit to those out there, and you are changing the world of therapy. You know, with those kids, man. Um, so introduce yourself, tell people where you're from, and then tell people how you got into the work that you're doing. You know, tell people about your journey.
Awesome. So I'm from Utah. So I'm born and raised in Utah, um, and I love it here. The mountains are here. There's great people here, and there's people that struggle here. So, and with someone that is dedicated to helping people, I'm in the right spot to be able to help. Um, so, and I've been a clinical therapist for 16, 17 years, helping people that have struggled. And it's a great honor to be able to sit in those rooms, to be able to have people pour out their hearts that need help and to be that support. So I just feel honored and blessed and felt like I didn't necessarily choose that. I felt like the path I've been on has led me to be able to help people. So it's a great honor, and I'm super blessed to be here. And I've been through hell and back, but what we learned through that process it is who I am today. So, and I'm at the beginning of my journey, I felt like life was unfair and I didn't deserve this, and it was hard to approach. So
Yeah.
about 5 years ago, Tony, is when I felt like our life was going as good as it has ever gone for my family. And I was sitting back and going, man, I love my life. I really love my life with being a clinical director at a recovery program, building our dream house. Our boys are thriving. Just things were just rocking and rolling. And then my wife came to me and she says, Jason, I have this lump in my stomach and I don't know what to do. And I said, let's wait a week and we'll figure it out as we go. But a week went by and it had grown. And that's where concerns had come up. And we're like, let's get this taken care of. And I remember Tony saying, let's hurry up and get this taken care of because we got to get our life. We got to go on with our life. But unfortunately, like we went to doctors, we ran some tests, we did some blood work, and we couldn't find any answers. So we ended up at the hospital doing a exploratory surgery to actually see what's going on. And I remember sitting in the waiting room and waiting for what was going to happen with my life. My in-laws were there, my sister, my wife's best friend, and then the door opens and the doctor looks me in the eyes and she goes, "Jason, I'm so sorry. Your wife has stage 4 colon cancer." And it was a moment I'll never forget because it literally altered and changed who I was today. And
Wow.
I remember just the heaviness, my brain couldn't shut off because I was like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna tell my boys? How are we gonna fight this? And I was like so overwhelmed with the news that was delivered to me. And
Yeah.
I, I when you have hard news that's just delivered to you, like it's you don't forget those moments, and it just like changes you, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. There's nothing that can prepare you for those events.
Right. No, there really isn't, man. And that's one of the phrases that people dread hearing, especially if you have if they find a lump or something. I've talked to several people, women who have had breast cancer, and a buddy of mine right now, he's battling liver and kidney cancer, and things like that. And so, like your story is someone that, is a story that people can relate to on a more deep level, right? Those words, "you have cancer."
Yeah.
No one wants to hear that. I mean, and that is devastating. And as a clinical therapist, I was reading, you had started the process of starting your grief, right? Depression and things like that, because eventually um, she lost the battle.
Yeah. Yeah. When you
And
get,
no,
I
go
was gonna
ahead, go
say,
ahead.
Tony, when you get that news, it's almost like you are kicked into the grief cycle because you're beginning to grieve a life you used to have. So it's starting to feel all these
This
emotions
is true. Yeah,
start to come. I haven't lost my wife, but I started to lose a life that I was already celebrating, and that was hard. And I was feeling all these emotions on top of starting to care for my wife that was going through treatment. So I wasn't prepared. And for anybody that's listening, it's okay to feel overwhelmed and inadequate and angry at God, and especially when you go through that, because those are normal emotions that you experience, and you're not
right.
alone. There's so many people that feel exactly like I do and what you're feeling out there.
Wow, man. Now, now you said something in the beginning, because you was working in recovery work, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Before that happened. Now, how did you get into recovery work?
It's interesting because I don't have any addiction history at all. When I got out of when I graduated, I was looking for jobs and opportunities, and I just sent out some emails to professors and looking for an internship to get my feet wet as a clinical therapist. And recovery said, "Hey, come work for us." So I ended up working in a methadone clinic. People
Mhm.
addicted to opiates. At 5 o'clock in the morning, I was doing therapy with people that were addicted to opiates, and it was some of the sweetest work, to be able to listen to people that felt like nobody was on their side, and I was just listening and caring for them and walking them through the process. So I began to fall in love with people that had struggles, and fall in love with people that are going through hard events at a early page in my career. And
Yeah.
it was some of the most rewarding work that I've ever done in my life.
See, and I love that right there. And I want to veer off topic a little bit because I have to ask the question. What do you think about the crap that's going on in the world today? Being a clinical therapist, being someone who has been in peer peer support, with the fentanyl, with the meth, and that new stuff that they got going around Trank. I'm watching the news. I'm watching all of these, because I myself am a certified peer recovery coach as well. And I see all of this stuff. I still have Narcan in my office for just in case purposes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I look at the world and I look at what's going on, and it breaks my heart because not too long ago, I get a call from one of my clients, and his daughter had just overdosed off of heroin and fentanyl, and it broke my heart because she was nothing but 16 years old, and I'm thinking to myself, how did you get, how can you get into a lifestyle like that? I mean, that's only because I've never tried it before, and I come from, I'm a 70s baby, right? So I was around to see crack and all, and I've seen it progress into heroin and meth and speed and all of that stuff, right? But the stuff that's going around nowadays is just ridiculous, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one thing that I've learned in recovery is the opposite of grief and addiction is connection. And I think a lot of these things get started when they disconnect from people and they begin to isolate. And that happens from things that's happened in their life. And
Right, right,
they feel so shameful. They feel like nobody can relate to me, or I don't want to share with them because this is embarrassing to have happen to me. So
right,
we hold on to those, and we start to become lonely from the outside world or from people that are helping us. And we get in such a spot that we justify who we are, who our morals and values, and we justify using drugs to help cope and
right,
to get rid of all the pain. And that's a scary thing. And that's what's so sad is when I would sit in these offices, I would hear things that they never told anybody in their life. And I
right.
was so honored to hear that because they're taking those emotions, they're opening up, and they're reducing some of the intensity of those emotions so that
Mhm.
they could begin to feel better. And I just see the epidemic that's going on. I see a lot of people that are emotionally struggling. A lot of people are alone. People are shameful. And there's a lot of people that are inadequate to support them because they just want to shame those people. They don't want to understand them from where they've been through.
Right,
They just want to look at the person and saying, what the hell are you doing? And that's not what these people need. They need
right,
someone they need someone that's coming with a level of compassion. And I always, instead of asking the question, what's wrong with you? Let's start asking, what happened to you? And then we can understand a person from a deeper level, and
hmm,
that's where we can start to help people. But we're not ready for that. We just want to rip off the band-aids, and we just want to shame these people and not hear them and walk them through that process like someone that cares. Probably like you, Tony, you have many of those moments where you're sitting there and you're just listening to people and you're
hmm.
hearing these awful things, but you're not running away. You're just listening to them with compassion and be like, that sucks. I'm here for you. Let's do this together. And I think more people
Right.
need to hear that more often.
And you're absolutely right, man. There's a lot of people that need to hear it, and I just want to add to it, a lot of the times, like I work in the grief world, and I can relate to a lot of the addiction that goes on, and you're absolutely right, is to cover up the trauma, the years and years of trauma that's been piled on top of them, right? And so I was telling someone, they came to me with a question like, I have a family member you know, uh, who's hooked on heroin and now starting to venture into meth. And so it's a combination of all of these different things, fentanyl, um, and some other stuff. And so they find themselves combining it, you know, and things like that. Now, this person is really concerned because he goes, my family member has been lucky so far not to overdose or not to, die from the fentanyl and things like that, because fentanyl is something else, right? I mean, you can barely touch it, and And it does strange things to you if it don't take your life. And I told him, I said, in all actuality, the world that we live in is a hard world, right? And when you have compiled trauma, it's the easiest thing for a person to do is try to escape the world. And so
Mhm.
that's where the drugs come in at, and they don't mean any harm, but they don't really understand what's going on, because once you get a taste of the numbness, or you can be around people that you can relate to in that world, the people that you can do things with, right? That becomes your life. And then they become into what I like to call a grief loop, right? You know what I'm saying? So they're grieving, but they have stages where they go, I don't want to feel this. And boom, you know what I'm saying? Here comes the drugs. And then I'm going to be around my friends, because if you're low on money or cash, there's always somebody out there that's going to feed it to you as well, and I just reminded them that they are human beings and they are hurting.
Yeah.
And instead of coming to you, because in our community, in a lot of communities, we're not taught to talk about it, right? We're not taught to talk about the hurt and things like that. We're taught to suck it up or man up and things like that. And so that's their way of saying, I'm hurting, but I don't understand it. So I've learned, in my world, I've learned how to hold space with individuals. And I
Mhm.
tell people, when I'm in your space with you, my job is to visit. I'm gonna be the best visitor that you need. Whether if I meet you somewhere, or if I'm coming to your home or something like that, I'll get up and I'll make sure that you don't have to do anything. Where's your cup at? Would you like something to drink? You know what I'm saying? Because I want you to sit down. I don't need you moving around. You know, and I'll go and get them something to drink. Hey, do you want something to eat? You got some snacks in here? What can I get you? So I learned to hold that space with them.
Awesome.
And a lot of times, like you said, it's just they want someone to talk to. They want to unleash that heavy burden that they're carrying along with them. I don't think a lot of people understand that, because it's unfamiliar territory for
Yeah.
a lot of us running around. And I think, as you mentioned before, the loneliness and things like that. I think when COVID hit, it exposed a lot of that, and a lot of
Mhm.
people never got out of that rut neither.
It's a hard rut to get out of.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
I
is.
I as you're talking, Tony, I thought about, so with my wife, they gave us 2 to 3 years to fight cancer,
Hmm.
and after 9 months, she passed away. So
Yeah.
I felt like my my trauma, my event of my life caused me to go into that spiral of emotions and
Right.
things that I was afraid to talk about. And as a man, I was putting on a mask to protect my emotions, because
Yes.
I didn't want my kids to see me suffer, and I want everybody to think I'm okay, but I'm not okay. And this mask I wore, even through why my wife was in treatment and why I was at the funeral, and anybody that's listening, you get a lot of support during the funeral, but
Mm.
when the funeral is over and you're sitting home, that's when the heaviness, the darkness, the loneliness begins to creep in. And I remember
Right.
waking up and going, man, this is hard. And i I sat, I I took a couple days off to try to kind of get my head on straight. And then my boss calls me and says, I need you back to work. And I was like, "Ah, man, I can't. This is so hard, but I guess I'll go back and try to make it work." The unfortunate thing is, going back that early, things don't get better. Things actually
No.
things get complicated. And I remember a significant event where I would come home from work, and my oldest son would look at me and he'd go, "Dad, you come home angry every day." And I was like, man, I'm not doing a very good job hiding my mask of emotions. And I was thinking, I need to do something different. And I think this was a turning point, and this can be a turning point as we're talking about connection. is I
Mm.
remember finding myself in a church parking lot at a lunch break, texting 14 of my friends, family, people in my church group, and just said, "Hey, I need some help. Can you come to my house? And I want to just tell you how things are going." And I threw that out, like hoping that my Hail Mary would be answered. And
Right.
and that night I remember just getting knocks at the door, and I was like thinking, "Oh no, I have to start talking."
Yes.
For like a second, like, oh no, I gotta take off my mask. But I was like, it's too heavy, it's too painful to hold on to this mask. So everybody came into my living room, and in a sense I called my own intervention. But
Right.
in the grief space, I called my own healing team. And I took off my mask and I began to be vulnerable and share my emotions. And it was a thing of beauty to see that people wanted to hear that I was struggling. And I invited them into my circle to begin to help me. Up until this point, people were hesitant and apprehensive to know what to say or how to help me because
Mm. Yes.
of how
Yes.
I was presenting to everybody in my community. But when I took that off, they saw where Jason was, and then they began to help me in that process. And what was amazing through this, and this is something I teach people and help them, is I created a team captain, and I had a code word when things were overwhelming, when stressful, or I was about ready to just break down. I could
Mhm.
text a code word to my team captain, and my team captain would send out a mass text to my team, and everybody in that team had a responsibility. When they got that text, they would come in and they would take the load and the stress off of me. So think
Mm.
about this, Tony. I'm texting my captain, it goes out, and my parents come over, and their job is to do my laundry. So they come over, and that's something that helps de-stress my life. My neighbor starts mowing my lawn. My neighbor comes and takes the kids a couple times a week, and then my buddy starts texting me like uplifting texts, and another friend starts to take me to lunch. But when I have a team to be able to help me, I can pull
Mm.
off all those stressors,
Yes. Yes.
and I can breathe, and it's not so overwhelming. And when I'm not emotionally overwhelmed, I can say, "Hey, mom, dad, I'm good. I can do my laundry now." I can ask to have those back in, and that's a healthy thing to do, is bring these things back into your life so you feel like you're functioning and
Mhm.
you're managing things. And up until that point, I thought, man, I was going to grieve for a long, long time. But as soon as I created a team that would help me, that was a huge turning point in helping me say, I'm going to grieve, but I'm going to grieve with a team, and it's going to empower me to be able to get through my grief and find joy sooner than later. And it was liberating. It's something I share and talk about because I think if everybody had an opportunity to create a team, whether it be a small team or a big team, it would help you through that grief space and help you find joy and happiness again. And it would, and I get excited about that because I experienced that. And as I share with people, they can find that happiness again. And I truly, honestly believe that.
Yeah. See, I love that because you explain it so well, the connectedness that you need when you're going through it, right?
Hmm.
Um, because people don't understand, especially if they've never experienced before. And you figured out something that I wish I would have experienced, would have figured out when I was going through the process of my losses. Um, but I ended up becoming the person that I needed as I was doing it. It wasn't until later on to where I was
Yeah.
going, you know what? I'm gonna develop a program. So just like how you have peer support um, um, individuals that come and saying you can call on and things like that when you're feeling the urge to want to go use, you have someone you have that sponsor. right?
Mhm. Mhm.
What I did is I said, you know what? In this grief world, why can't I have someone similar to that? And we're going to call this person your grief buddy,
Yeah.
right? So I started to develop this program and started bringing in these volunteers. It's like, hey, your only job is if I assign you to someone, that person needs to be able to get a hold of you, at any time, because grief, that's when grief shows up. They said, okay. Now their whole responsibility is to come and hold space with you, not to give advice or suggestions, but to listen. And like you said, what I'm saying, do chores around your house so you don't have to,
Yeah.
or what I'm saying, go get the groceries so you don't have to. But the key to it is, if they're going to go to the grocery store with you, you have to go with them, right? Because I want them to be around them, because when people are left to their own demise, especially when they're hurting bad, especially when it comes down to men, we have a tendency of going, you know what? This person's not around. This is my opportunity. You know what I'm saying? And we all know how that could end up. So that's the key to it is, I want the individuals to be involved with the grief buddy throughout that transition, because we can't go do the work for you, but we're there to walk with you in your darkest moments
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
things like that. Now I have to ask, because I have a series coming up, maybe something that you're interested in in March of next year. So I'm doing a complete series starting in January. I'm going to be interviewing couples about, child loss. And so I got 30 days of couples talking about, how it affected them. If they stayed together, divorced, did they bring in someone else? How did that other person, and how did your loss affect that relationship with them and with your kids, families, and your friends, right? Because everybody perceives it different, but you're the one carrying the grief, the heaviest of the griefs, is so we think, right? So I have to ask, with the loss of your wife, how did your kids do? Because you lost your wife and they lost their mother. So how did the kids process that? And also, how was your relationship with them what I'm saying, as moving forward? Because like you said, your son called you out and said, Dad, what I'm saying, you're always showing up angry. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious to know.
I mean, it's hard too. It's like, but you're the therapist. You help people all the time, right? But
Right,
to be a therapist with all the tools and going through it, it's like you don't have the tools. But my kids, they struggled. They had their own grief, and one of my oldest sons, he would the way he dealt with his grief is he went quiet and internal and didn't speak,
mm,
and maybe learned that from dad. So,
it
and then
happens, man.
my youngest, he was more vocal and angry and yelling, and he was more vocal. So I had two ways of dealing with their grief, and I was
Mm-hmm.
dealing with my own. So I'm just like, how do I do this? Like, how do I get help with my kids? The thing that I learned through this is what I was going through with my kids is we were living and operating on sad memories of my wife having cancer and her passing. And we
Yeah.
kept we relived that over and over, and it wasn't making us happy and it wasn't sustaining. So I thought, man, I got to do something different. So after that intervention, I made a hard decision to quit my job as a therapist and
Mm-hmm.
take and reconnect with my kids as a dad.
Okay.
And
Okay.
um, I I sat down at the table and I said, "Hey boys, I'm gonna take. I quit my job so I can spend time with you." And I made a bucket list of things to do with my boys, and we began to make some happy and fun, enjoyable memories that could sustain us. And I thought that was super helpful because my boys needed a dad, not
Mm-hmm.
a therapist, or they didn't need a buddy. They needed a dad. So I had to make that hard decision to reconnect
Right.
with them. And
Okay.
so we went and made some experiences to be able to bond us closer together, to laugh, to experience life, and to be able to have fun again. Um, and that was really helpful. But I remember it it was helpful for a time, but then there would be times where my kids would start feeling those emotions again. And I
Right.
remember one thing that I remember, this is a story I like to share with people because I remember being so frustrated that my boys weren't talking to me. They weren't
Mm,
opening up and saying how
yeah.
hard it is. And I'm like, I'm the therapist, like just talk to me. And I remember getting so frustrated. I ended up at Hobby Lobby and I just grabbed a bunch of paint and canvases. And I thought outside the box as far as having them communicate to me.
Right.
And I remember at the kitchen table putting out these canvases, and I was so used to asking them questions and they would say no, or they wouldn't give me very good answers. So I just said, "Hey, just paint me what it's like to be you in a day, or what's it like to go to school." So
Right.
in an indirect way, I was getting them to paint and express themselves, and
Okay.
and what and what I was doing is I was releasing those emotions that were caused from grief. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is really working," because I could find out how they were feeling and how they were doing, as well as without talking, they could release that emotions. And so
Okay.
ar- art became a thing to be able to release those emotions. And then when we would go and do something physical, we could release those emotions. So I learned therapy's great, but there's alternative ways to release those emotions from grief that
Yeah.
can be so helpful as well, whether it be like walking or art or music. Those can be so great to be able to reduce those intense emotions, and then your kids will be in a better spot to have more of those harder conversations. So
Hmm.
if we come talk to them when their emotional levels here, you're not going to have a very good experience. So
Right. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
use all the alternative ways to decrease those emotions, and then you can talk to them when they're at this level. And when you talk, their emotions will probably raise, but you'll have some flexibility to have more of an open-ended conversation, and you'll get to a deeper spot quicker than try to just keep trying to talk to them. So that was really helpful for me, and
Okay.
it allowed,
Okay.
and still to this day, my youngest son, whenever he gets emotionally upset or frustrated, he'll go up to his room and he'll do some art, and that's his go-to now. And I was like, that's so cool that he learned something that is still helpful today.
See, I love that, right? Because I'm developing support groups for children. So I'm educating about how children process grief because,
Uh-huh.
you know, being a male, I've primarily focused on men and things like that, understanding how men grieve through my own experiences and things like that. Understanding how men grieve, I mean, cry, right? And it was always the similar thing across the board when it came down to men. So it made it a little easier for me to relate. We express ourselves through anger, right? And so
Hmm.
when I talk to women, and they go, he's always angry and this, that, and another. Or I talk to the friends of the, always angry, this, that, and another. I said, and I started laughing. It goes, no, it's not funny. I said, no, it's not funny, but it is in a way because of what you're seeing and your perception of what you're seeing. They go, what do you mean? I said, think about what you just said. He's expressing himself through anger. He won't
Hmm.
cry. He won't, you know what I'm saying? He won't say how he feels. I said, well, here's a few things that you have to understand. As men, we're not taught how to express ourselves like that. We're not taught how to talk. We're taught to man up, not to cry, things like that. So, what's the first thing that we resort to? Being angry. I said, you start to see the connection now. And they go, what do you, huh? I go, yeah. So, when men cry, it's the anger that you see. That's how we express what we're going through. That is our go-to. So when I come across a client and they're experiencing a deep wave of grief or something like that, and I see them angry, I often go, yeah, hey, you know what? I want to take you somewhere. So I used to fight MMA, and I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And so they go, what do you come on, I want to take you somewhere. So I take them up there and I talk to my buddy, hey man, you mind if we use the mat in the ring for a little bit? They're looking like, oh, put on the pads. Put on the pads. This is what we're gonna do, right? You know what I'm saying? You're crying. You need an outlet. And I don't seem right to let you walk out of here with that anger built up in you because I see you, right? And most men, that's what we want. And a lot of times we want people to acknowledge what's going on with us and go, hey, I see you and I understand what's going on. So I take them up there. We get the anger out. We get out on the mat. We roll around and things like that, doing some jujitsu and back. And it never fails. Each and every time I've done it. When we're done, that man would get up. He just take off his pads here, grab me, and all of a sudden he's crying on my shoulders. And I go, I know. I see you, Just remember, I'm here if you need me, and we can do this anytime that we want. I have access to it. And now, listening to you, and I love that you said this because studying how kids, process grief and things like that, because sometimes they don't have the words to express what's going on.
Yeah.
But if you do things like give them what's the toys that they can put together?
Legos.
Yeah, the Legos, right? You give them something like that, you just lay it out and without any sort of direction, and you go, hey, put together something. They will often be creative and put that together. And then you said artwork, right? And so I got to thinking, I was like, you know what? I should do a group on that. You know what I'm saying? Expressing your grief through art. And so yeah, man, that is truly, truly amazing. That is truly amazing. And
Yeah.
looking at where you're at right now, because did you get remarried again? Yes.
I did. Yeah.
Now, when did that come about? I mean, because that is truly amazing. And you're the second, maybe third person that I know that have lost their spouse and have remarried. That's one of the things I have not experienced yet. And if I did, it would just complete that holy trinity. But I'm so deadly afraid of jumping into a relationship because honestly, I don't want. I'm afraid of losing someone else, and not and finding myself in a position to where I may spiral out of control.
Yeah.
So I've been afraid of that. How do you get past the fear of losing someone, and possibly the fear of, well, it happened once. You know what I'm saying? What if it happens again? Type thing. And you're happy now.
I guess it's always going to be a fear. I talk a lot with people about doing your work. You have to do your work in order to be able to be in a healthy, thriving relationship again.
Yeah.
Because and what you want to be is you want to be your real authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not there, then you got some work to do before you want to invite someone into your life.
Right.
And I feel like I took a year to really dive in and figure out my emotions and work on me and learn how to be emotional, learn how to communicate. And I felt like I work on those individual things that I struggled with. And by working on those on a regular basis, it allowed me to attract the right person into my life. And lo and behold,
Okay.
Kirsten's my wife now, but she was doing the same work as well. But she also lost her husband to cancer. So she had some deep grief she had to work through. So, which is interesting because and the dates and the parallels we've talked about, it's like in the same August, right before we met, we were going through the hardest, darkest things that we were struggling with. And then that September is when we connected online, but we talk about how we've done our work. We got our place where we felt good about ourselves. We felt good about our connection with God. We felt good about we were emotionally intelligent, so we could express ourselves. We could talk about our emotions, and we could have mature conversations. And that was really helpful. That brought us together to be able to make our relationship work. So, and what's awesome too is what Kirsten and me have been able to do is, instead of not talking about our spouses, we keep that part of the conversation. We ask about different, like, what did Valerie like? What was she like? Or what would she do in this situation? Or what did you dislike about Cody? So we keep them alive in our lives.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think that is a very healthy thing to do that people forget to do. But that comes from a place that we're emotionally mature to be able to have those open conversations. And
Mhm.
if emotions come up, guess what? We're going to sit in the emotions and we're going to help them. And that is what we've learned and developed in our relationship to be able to help each other.
Right.
Um, are we afraid of losing each other? 100%. Are we afraid that we're going to go through that loss and those experiences? Yes, but we are focused on the here and now, being intentional with what we do on a regular basis, and we take full advantage of what we have now, and that makes life so much better than
Mm.
trying to think I'm going to lose this person. If we operate like that, we're going to struggle with living a really full life. We're going to be second guessing ourselves. We're going to live in anxiety. But I live for one day at a time or a week at a time, and that has really brought our relationship together and really
Mhm.
strengthened us. And by doing so, we attract other people into our lives that are good and doing good things.
Right.
And it makes life so much easier when we're that. I think that's a vulnerability. By being that vulnerable invites vulnerability, and those are the people that I want to be around. the people
I'm
that are just
yeah.
raw.
See, I'm right there with you, right? And it is funny how you said that, and then seeing it full circle. And we'll get into the work that you're doing and how you got into it. I want to share just a little bit of something that dawned on me as you were saying it. So I did get into a relationship, right? Several years later, met someone, been knowing this person for about almost 3 years now. And about 9 months ago, we decided that we was going to date and see what's going on. And so we was having a conversation because she has children, and I I'm the last. I can't have any more kids. My son was the last one, right? When he passed away. And so I had been standoffish because I have friends who have children and things like that were friends of my son's. And so in a lot of and so for the longest time, I didn't want to go around them because I didn't want them to be reminded, of the loss. But what I didn't understand is that they were grieving themselves, right? And so over time, it's like, you know what? I want to be a part of their lives. I can't have any more kids or anything like that. Now, here's the really really funny part. Now I'm with the lady that I'm with now. Her middle son has the same birthday as my son
Mm,
and is the same age as my son
mm,
of where he would be right now.
mm,
And so when she told me, I was like, oh my God, right? And so I finally meet this young man. And this young man just took a liking to me, and I took a liking to him. And I realized that, wow, this this just came full circle. And I enjoy having him around. I really do. He reminds me a lot of the characteristics that that my son had, and his willing to joke around and laugh. It's contagious, just a lot of fun. And like you said, being in a spot where it makes me vulnerable opened up the doors for me to be able to accept her children into my life and not
Yeah.
be afraid of saying, "Oh man, like I don't want to lose another one, right? I don't want to be around you because maybe what I'm carrying may rub off on you, and I don't want you to have to experience what I'm going through." So it's looking at the fear and saying, you know what, whatever, I'm still going to take that chance. Now, you started something that revolutionized the therapy world, and I get excited because when I was reading it and when we talked last time, I was like, man, that is so fucking cool, man. That is so cool. So let's talk about how that came about in the work that you do with the Hope Kit.
Yeah. So obviously going through grief with my boys and myself and being a counselor, I found a lot of resources that were really good to help people in grief, and it frustrated
Right.
me. And I was just like, gosh, this industry sucks so bad. Like we can't help people when we're supposed to be really good at helping. So that always like resonated with me. So part of the bucket list that we created was on there was create a lemonade stand. And what we wanted to do is raise money. $100 was our goal. And what we wanted to do is create these kits for people that were lost loved ones, going through cancer, struggling. And
Mhm.
so that's what we wanted to do. So out in our front yard, we set up a lemonade stand, be like, okay, let's go for it. And a couple hours went by, and then I started counting up the money, and I noticed that we made $1,500. and I was
Wow.
and I was like, oh my gosh. And my son's like, hey dad, we're rich. Let's do lemonade full time. I said, and I said, no, 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 buddy, you're missing it. We can just make more kits. So we began to put on these kits for people, and we threw it on social media and said, hey, anybody struggling, let us know. We want to deliver these kits. So we found people found people that were struggling in those situations. And me and my boys would show up, and
Mhm.
we were there for them. We sat in their emotions and we say, yeah, life sucks. And my kids would talk to their kids. And it became such a powerful experience that I remember walking out of my first family, and I was like, man, I really want to do this full time. So
Mhm.
we this was we shared it with people, and this was like a way of life. And what was amazing is when I would go to the store with my boys, instead of like, hey, I want this, they began to think about, hey, let's get that for our families. Hey, that looks really cool for our families. So they began to think outside of themselves because they were thinking of the Hope Kit. And what's amazing is I have a friend that helped me in my grief. He was one of my biggest supporters. He'd owned an online marketing company that was super successful, and he saw what I was doing. He saw me on social media. He's like, man, Jason is so happy. He's living such a good life. And I was just like, I'm just trying to be happy. But he took me to lunch and he goes, I love what you're doing. I absolutely love your passion and what you're doing. He's like, I want to do this with you. And I was like, okay, what is
Nice.
that? I goes, what does that mean? He goes, I feel like we could create something where we could help so many people. And and we got thinking about it, and that's where we started a company called the Hope Kit, which is, I believe, one of the best grief boxes out there. So inside this box is tools and resources that you can send to a friend that lasts way past the death anniversary and helps people through their grief. It's like,
Right.
yes, like I've taken my pain and I put it into passion to be able to help people. And it has things that will comfort you. It has a
Mhm.
blanket. It has chocolate chip cookies, things that make you feel good. It has a children's book that we wrote about grief that helps you remember your loved one, and it comes with a keychain. It has thank you cards. It has what I consider one of the most amazing things in there. They're a
Mhm.
deck of support cards. And what these deck of support cards do is they tell you what to say to someone that is grieving.
Okay. Okay.
I interviewed over 200 widows and people that have lost loved ones, and these are the
Mhm.
questions that people said to them that made the biggest difference, and we compiled them on cards. So if I lost someone, I get my box and I take these cards and I hand them to my support, and then they keep texting and support me on a daily basis and start to build you up and build that team. And these are questions that are help you kind of start talking and over and getting some of that yuck out that's
Yeah.
caused from the
Yeah.
grief. And
Yeah.
then you begin to become more open and willing to do more things because your friends are connecting with you and you're getting that yuck out, and
Mm, I love that.
you start on this healing journey, and it's all there, and we get the opportunity to share it with people, and I'm so excited and passionate to be able to say now, rather than sending them flowers or food that you end up throwing away anyways, here's a box that's going to last for way after the anniversary, and your
Right.
connections are going to help you heal. And I'm so excited about it and sharing it with the
Man,
world.
that right there is very, very, very exciting, man. And I want to talk to you when we get off the air because that right now. Do you ship out across the United States and things like that? Do you ship out your packages?
Yeah, we can ship them out, all free shipping in the continental United States, and outside of the United States will charge for shipping, but we have the ability to ship it all over the world. Mhm.
Nice, man. Very, very nice. So what's next for you?
It's keep growing this, keep sharing it with others. So um, the world needs to know there's an alternative to grief to be able to help them.
Mhm.
Flowers are great, but they don't last. But there's tools to be able to help. I just don't want people to go through what I went through.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and part and I my desire is to grow this because it's what I'm passionate about, at helping people.
Hmm.
It's a ripple effect in the world to be able to help people, and let's find hope for everybody. So
That's what I'm
we,
saying. That's yeah. Oh man, that right there is amazing. If you had any words to give the audience, what would you leave them with?
I I always fall back on um, connection is king. The opposite of loneliness, depression, anxiety, sin, mistakes, trauma is connection.
Mm,
Finding anybody, finding God, your higher power, finding a friend to be able to start opening up so that you can get some healing. I feel that is so helpful. And going back to your point, Tony, it's like COVID disconnected us from connecting, like the
yeah.
things that we used to do, and now we
Yes.
we need to get back into that space where we feel connected with people that will help us through the hard things. That we need to do that more often, and
Yes, we do.
we need to figure out how to be not so connected on our phones, but more connected, like heart to heart and human to human, more often.
Yes. I love that. And where can people find you?
You can find us on the Hope Kit, a website, hopekit.com. You can find me on TikTok, Jason M. Clawson. I share videos about Grief 101. You can find us on Facebook at the Hope Kit. And and if you want to email me with questions, Jason at hopekit.com. I'm happy to help.
Nice, 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 man. Jason, man, thank you Thank you for coming up and sharing your story. It's so inspiring, man. And again, I know I said it before. I want to say it again. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I told you ever since we connected on Instagram and everything, I was always a huge fan and wanted to connect with you. And we finally had the opportunity to be able to talk face to face. I know we've messaged each other. It was like trying to make it happen, and you know what I'm saying? And it finally came together. But, as they say, all in due time, you know what I'm saying? You
Yeah,
can't rush things.
absolutely.
You gotta let things kind of work themselves out. And in the right time, here we are, right? You know what I'm saying? Man, thank you. Thank you for the
My,
work that you do, man.
my
Thank you
pleasure.
for being there and being there for those people.
Yeah.
Makes me feel good to know that there's people like myself out there that are heart centered and want to see people heal and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
And
And
and I was
go
going to
ahead.
say this, Tony, the doctor in the hospital said cancer has a way of enhancing your life.
Hmm.
And I think this can go for everybody, whether it be trauma or sin or addiction can enhance your life. It's just depending on
Hmm.
what you do with it. And as I look back, I'd be like, man, my life has really been enhanced because I leaned into the discomfort of my grief, and I
Hmm.
got and I got and I got stronger, and I learned what I need to learn in order to find happiness. And I feel like that is possible for everybody. It's just
Yes,
everybody's going to have trials and challenges. It's just what you do with it that makes you great.
it's very true. This is very true. For everyone who is tuning in today, and will be tuning in later on. Thank you for tuning in. And as I said before, if you guys want to support the channel, go over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. We got so many more amazing guests coming. So you gotta stay tuned, man. We got some great stories, some that's going to inspire you, but also give you tools and things like that. Do me a favor, if you guys, the holidays are coming up, reach out to Jason, get yourself one of those hope kits, and use the tools and the resources that are in there to help you get through these hard days and things like that, because the holidays can be triggering, but you don't have to go through it alone. Or you can reach out to a few other people and make sure, but don't do it alone, right? Just don't do it alone. Connectedness and community is key in these hard times of the year. And with that being said, Jason, thank you. And for everyone else, thank you for allowing us to keep bringing these stories to you. Thank you for the love and the support you guys just continually show. And until next time, you guys keep your head up, and we love you. Peace.